Welcome. This is the Health and Wellness Coach Journal podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jessica Singh, the founder and CEO of the Center for Health and Wellness Coaches. This is a podcast for coaches to explore topics related to health, wellness, and coaching, sharing knowledge and sharing light. Lewin Keller is the founder of CoachBot.ai, an AI platform on a mission to make coaching accessible to 1 billion people. After undergoing his own profound transformation from couch potato to Ironman, from consumer to yoga teacher, and from party animal to father of 3, he trained as a professional coach himself. With tech experience ranging from startups to Google, Levin combines AI tools, no-code technology, and the vision of a coach-centered marketplace to empower coaches to create their own AI products for easier client acquisition, delivery, and thus scalable impact. Welcome, Levin.
Thank you so much, Jess. Hi.
It's a pleasure to have you here today. I'd love to start by asking you, just as you reflect on your life career journey, the here and now, I guess what key events or points got you to where you are today? You've had such a rich background and experience.
There's actually a few life events that I want to call out. It all starts back in childhood when my dad left us. He's not passed away. They were just divorcing early. That changed my life tremendously because I took on responsibility quite early, which maybe I gave up some of that creativity and sorrowless being a child. But then it also created a strong sense of, let's say, commitment and responsibility that I was able to use later on. So during my teenage years, I was very chilled and did prioritize my music and my socials over studying. Luckily, I was always able to pass good enough grades to go to wherever I want to go. The second life event that I want to call out was when I was accepted into business school. It was a private business school, totally not my world. I saw a scholarship. My mom was like, "Hey, don't you want to apply?" And I was like, "Come on, like I don't have these super A grades. I have B, and why should I?" But then I did, and I was super lucky that I made the assessments and the tests over there. Apparently, very good. This brought me into a new world where my sense of being and belonging was challenged by the cultural conflict, other kids being brought by their driver to school, and I was hardly having enough to pay my rent. But then also it opened up new opportunities, for example, traveling the world, working in different kind of internships, doing exchange semesters, and then finding a master's. Then this was the third life event that was, I think, life changing for me because I chose international business master, where it was really not German at all, whereby I think the bachelor was still like maybe 10, 20% of the students were from Germany, whereby in the master's it was a tri-national program. And that was when I left, I think, the German identity and fully merged to a global citizenship. And today I consider myself a global citizen. So that opened great doors for me. And this is also, I think, due to social connections that I made, was a good friend during my master's. He was the one referring me to Google. And 1 year after my graduation, invited by Google to an interview. And then on the way home to the airport, they calling me up and say, "We want you." I was like, "What? I just did the interview. How could that happen?" And then this was, I think, the next and the biggest life event for me that really opened up the path, the career that I was on, because the 1 billion users that we want to impact with our AI powered and human augmented coaching, that's coming back from the Google brainwashed mindset over there, because they have multiple apps that are powering over 1 billion users. So I thought, hey, we can build at least one, right? So yeah, I was in Google where I totally changed my diet. I totally changed my lifestyle, stopped drinking alcohol, stopped smoking, started with vegetarian and plant-based kind of diet, and then turned to an Ironman, met my wife, had the first kid, and this is how it all got together. And then I think about 1.5 years ago, I made the call, hey, it's enough time that I spent learning in the corporate environment. Now it's time to go out there and build myself. And yeah, now I'm on this journey with CoachBot.ai.
It sounds like all through and through, you've just opened yourself up to possibility.
Yeah, I primed myself to see what are the opportunities right and left. And then whenever I have them available and I want them, I grab them. This is not to say that I said no to opportunities that were really exciting, like relocating to the US and so forth at a exciting time of my life, but I always knew what's close to my heart, like building a family. And this was the foundation that I didn't want to jeopardize. So sometimes it was a kind of a tough no, knowing that something is waiting maybe at the end of the tunnel or there's another door opening up for me.
So, as you found yourself going through this journey, when you had first started your journey through all this business education, I know you initially said it was a different world compared to where you came from, where it felt like some of the others had come from. What do you feel like about yourself, your passions, your strengths that aligned with you on this journey?
There was another moment where I think I really found home in, let's say, my own body with my own soul and mind as a perfect alignment. But it was the business school where I was really stressed and I was really challenged in my sense of belonging and in the values that I was bringing with me from home, from my little village. And then the kids, some of them having abundant financial means, others had status, really great education already or whatsoever. So I think it was over there where I was really challenged to make a decision. And it was always my dream to somewhat contribute socially. So that's what I've done in my teenage years. And I was part of the local youth council and within our abilities doing stuff like little festivals and an internet cafe and so forth. And then I was like, okay, I go into politics or I study public management. And when I kind of prioritized the business scholarship, the business group scholarship over the studies that I actually wanted to do, where I was already enrolled actually. And I said, okay, let's do this in the masters. And then I remember it was actually on Bali when my dad visited me and we were having bigger life conversations. He was a social worker all his year. He worked as a teacher and then as a musician. He worked as a social worker. He helped people with drug problems and so forth. And then later on, he became something like a counselor and supervisor. And he was always defending the way of life, stay true to your values. And even if you don't maybe earn the money that you wish you had, it's much more important to be content. And it was a crazy moment over there. I remember it vividly where I told him, I'm fed up of being poor. I don't want to have all the hassle that you had paying the money for your three kids to your ex and then having the new life that you build and so forth. And it was always a topic for us to have money issues. And I was like, you know what? There's another way for me. It's the way of choosing business to learn faster. And by that time, I already made internships at the European Union level and so forth, where I realized that's not my world. And then said, okay, I can learn faster in a business environment. And then whatever I gained as experience, as wealth, and so forth, I can use to do good. And so far, this journey is working out fairly well because my wife and I, we were able to build a foundation and we're doing charity work and so on. It's beautiful. So I think I needed to be pushed to the edge. I needed to go into crisis mode. And I think we all had enough of it, especially when growing up. And I'm really glad that I was able to navigate out of it with a clear vision and an aligned heart.
It's so beautiful. I have goosebumps listening to you, just feeling that really strong conviction and inner strength, just even conveying in your voice.
Thank you.
Speaking of how it was going into crisis mode and being pushed, may I ask if you feel comfortable sharing a little bit more about that transformation you had that led you to change your lifestyle and do the yoga teacher training?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's actually the most sensitive part about my previous life so far and me growing up into adulthood. And for adulthood, for me, is not being 18, is really facing some of your fears, aligning with yourself, maybe also healing some of that trauma that you brought from childhood, no matter how relevant it's still relevant, but how real your memories are compared to the actual circumstances. So it was actually when I was living in Dublin, working for Google. I was a couple of years in. I was able to pay back my student loan. I was successful at my first promotions. Had a girlfriend over there. We were traveling probably every month. I was at least in three major places like cities or islands. Once or twice a quarter, I flew over the pond, somewhere Asia, US for work. It was a great life, very, let's say, fast paced, very light in terms of nothing holds us. With that, I aimed higher and further, and I also increased the pace more and more, which came to a moment for me where I realized I was just chasing, but not actually getting the same feeling of reward after having achieved it. So it was a diving license here, it was a motorcycle license there, jumping out of a plane here, and then bungee jumping there. But nothing could really satisfy me deeply anymore. Not from a happiness point of view. I was super happy. I was partying and I was having a great time socially, and also kind of from a hobby perspective and career. But the content was missing, the deep content, and it came down to purpose. I did not follow something that was meaningful enough to be seen as a life mission. And it got to a point where I boarded an airplane in the morning after maybe having 2, 3 hours of sleep. And hey, if there's a plane to crash today, it's better be mine, because it seems like I cannot really appreciate the abandoned life with all its prosperity and all the rewards that I was being able to enjoy. So this is where it was the first time where I felt like, is something wrong with me? Like literally, is something wrong in my mind? Yeah, it got to a point where I got more and more depressed because of having everything that I could ask for, but still not feeling happy. And it was one evening, I worked late, it was dark already, and I was walking close by my house at a river, and I called my mom and I was crying. I think it was the first time that I was crying in 5 years or so, like that I remember outside of movies. Now, I confess, when I watch romantic or even kids' movies, I cry easily because I think my system developed a way to let go of emotions that are piling up without allowing myself to actually feel and really process those emotions. So I remember when I watched the Titanic movie, being like age 11, I was like hiding my tears in front of my friends and one of my friends' dad because I felt embarrassed. But yeah, this was a liberating moment for me because it was the first time I allowed myself to really cry. It was the first time I opened up. In this moment, my mom, which was obviously very important, and she was recommending me to see someone. Now, she wasn't a counselor, she was like an alternative doctor, and she was like, hey, just looking alternative medicine just to see how can we, let's say, support me a little bit to get back on street, calm my nervous system. And that was actually enough. I didn't need any antidepressives. I didn't need any therapy back then. It was just someone saying, hey, you're okay. Don't worry. Like, you're just a little overworked. You're just a little overwhelmed. Your nervous system is totally overloaded. Just chill out. It's going to be fine. And this is where I realized, whoa, what am I doing here to my body, to my system all day long? I took cold plunges, cold showers. I was eating meat and fish every day. I was smoking. I was drinking almost every night in a week, even if it was just a pint with some colleagues after work and so forth. And this is the moment where I started to wake up and actually observe what all these things did to my body, my system, my mind. And this is the moment actually where just after I discovered my soul, I opened up again to the belief that I'm actually having a lot of faith, and I feel a lot of connection that is not only human connection, but also connection to nature. And I experience something that for me it's God, but it's not maybe the same understanding of God that you have. For me, it's just like this universal kind of love that's powering everything that is around us. So with that, it was a huge homecoming for me, and that was big alignment, body, mind, and soul. This is where I decided I go to India for a mini sabbatical and do a yoga teacher training and really learn something new and do something different. I left my smartphone at home and just changed in a way that I peeled off the onion and all these layers that I was conditioned and I added to protect myself to become more of myself. And I think I'm on this journey now for about 8 years, since I feel I'm faithful again and I align closer and closer to my soul by the day. And yeah, the journey is far from over. So there's still a lot to learn, a lot to discover, a lot to nourish. And I'm excited about each day and each podcast that I can have conversations about these things with people like yourself.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that and your experience. To have the courage to change your life, especially when it's defined as successful by everyone around you, and to do what you did, it's almost like a rebirth in a way.
You're right.
When you think about that sense of purpose and fulfillment initially that you said maybe it wasn't there, how has that been different ever since you've made this change in your life?
So, first of all, it was a dimmer switch. I feel many people these days are looking for enlightenment and they're reading this book and hoping to be enlightened afterwards. From my life experience, I'm 37 of age, like it's a process, it's a line, it's not a dot, it's not a point in time. And I think the big difference is like, what are we optimizing for, right? What is the output? Are we chasing a certain amount of money on our bank account? Are we chasing a certain status? Can be a PhD title, can be someone that we marry, whatever it is. The moment I changed to optimize for a state of being, I optimized for the present moment because I realized, whoa, doesn't really matter if I'm in debt or a millionaire. Now it does matter, but I can be happy either way in that moment by just breathing and connecting to myself. And I think there was more and more moments where I was able to realize, whoa, I'm again in my head, spinning things in a toxic or somewhat vicious cycle. And then how can I change this? How can I flip it so it's a virtuous cycle? And I always refer to this metaphor, which is still so true for me today. Is the glass half empty or is it half full? And I still have moments of doubt. I still have moments of fear and so forth, but they became less and less. And yeah, mostly I'm just bathing in gratitude, enjoying all the things that I'm having. And yeah, it's really a deep feeling of content versus this optimizing for happiness.
That question you asked before, you were sharing in your journey of, if this was my last day, that reflection, that just went straight to the soul. And I think for anyone, whoever has gone through a transformation, I had a very similar experience about 7 or 8 years ago, going through emergency medicine, physician training, day in and day out. You see so many people younger than you die, and younger, it doesn't matter the age. Sometimes it's just so traumatic. And it's like, if this is my last day alive, am I happy? Did I do what I wanted to do with this gift of life? And so now that you have made all these changes, and I know we're going to get to talking about coaching and technology, but as you think about your life's journey and legacy, when you think about the type of father you are and the mark you're leaving on this world, what comes up for you?
Yeah, I think while I'm peeling off the layers of the onion to be more authentic, to be more true to myself and more honest to the world, also about the insecurities, the fears, the dreams. If this would be the last day, the first thing that would come to mind is a big smile. Because I'm like, wow, nice. I'm not dying miserably in a career that I hate or in a relationship that I don't like or with kids that don't love me or whatever. No, it's really like, oh my gosh, how could this world provide and turn out so beautifully that I get to enjoy living in a peaceful place, having so much food in the fridge and so many things around that I can be busy with, and then realize, oh wait, it's actually my Shakti mat and my meditation and breath work that is really fueling when I feel I need some nurture. So yeah, I'd be just going on with my day. I would probably work a little less, just wrap things up, hand over the business to the person that I trusted the most, and then go and spend the rest of the day with my family, make a few phone calls to important people, tell them how much I love them, and then hopefully would fall asleep in peace.
Sounds very calm and content, wise, thoughtful.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so, all of that being said, on this spiritual journey, now as you describe your work, so you said a year and a half ago, you started building this for yourself. What exactly was your vision with CoachBot AI and that you've been able to manifest so far?
So it started from the fact that I only learned about coaching fairly late. Like I was already working in Google. I had already completed my master's. I was about 2 years into my professional career. And I think every person who's early in their career is struggling with, first of all, something like maybe feelings of imposter syndrome and some kind of insecurities at work on how to deal with colleagues or with a manager, how to build a successful career plan and navigate the challenges and the opportunities that come along, and then eventually also build something that is healthy as a integration of work and life becoming more and more important while you maybe grow as an employee, as a solopreneur, or as a leader or whatever. So when I got to experience coaching, it was actually a colleague in Google who was just going to coach training, and she did the Grow and the Oscar model with me. And I was like, wait, that's pretty easy. I like it. And this led to me participating in some seminars of famous coaches and learning more about coaching, and then eventually doing the coach training myself. And it just stuck with me like, why is coaching so expensive? Like, it's crazy. And especially in the Western world where most of the coaching is happening, rates, I think their average is something like $240 an hour. And yeah, today I work with coaches, they charge $950 an hour. Like, wow. And they're amazing. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, they're totally worth every cent or penny. But It's just like, how can we make this available for the person in a rural area in an emerging country or somewhere else in the world? And how can we bring coaching to you when you need it? How can you learn about the difference of therapy, coaching, mentoring, and so forth, maybe already in school? And for me, the only way to get there was building a tool that is vastly available. It must be known, it must be almost free of charge in order to reduce the barriers. And then it must be safe so that people can have a safe and educational first experience. And it's likely not about being coached already in this first conversation, but just having an open chat, being curious and learning about what is coaching and why is it so powerful. And for me, coaching is really, it has less stigma than therapy. So it's vastly available. We have 5 million people who call themselves a coach on LinkedIn. We have about 110,000 credentialed coaches from the big coaching bodies. And you can become a coach fairly quickly, right? Like today, I think 3 months or 6 months are the shortest program for a coach. And probably just the basic concepts and methodologies can be learned in a couple of days. Now, that's far away from some of the great coaches that are out there having done a master study and then went to coach training, did their associate, professional, even master coach and so forth. But nevertheless, coaching as a skill set, I think, is growing in importance. And we're seeing it in managers training on coaching and so forth. Yet it's only the business kind of managers and the senior employees that have this access to coaching. And on the consumer side, it's really only if you have the funds to afford a good coach. It was early 24 in January when I was big on the LLM usage, and I just realized how awesome it is to have your own custom GPT for this and for that. And this is where I learned how to use an LLM as a coach. And I realized it's stacking questions, it's not really doing as I wanted to do. And there were a few issues with it. So I was like, okay, how can we make that better? And this is where I experimented with it, built a coach myself as a just a GPT wrapper, and got some amazing feedback, not only from the people who are new to coaching and who wanted to learn more, or who were surprised because they didn't even ask to learn about coaching, but when they did, they felt, wow, this is exciting. This is actually really helpful. But also the people who knew coaching and the coaches themselves. So even MCC coaches, the master coaches, they've been working likely for 10 years plus in the space. They said, wow, this is pretty good. And I was like, yes, it is. So I already knew that coaching will have this revolution coming up with the LLMs. And I agreed with two of my friends, one that I was doing also the coach training with, and another one that I know who's a techie. We agreed, hey, let's build this platform that is kind of an end-to-end coach, which was like starting with assessment, then doing the coaching, then doing action and goal tracking. This was okay, successful. Like we got good feedback, we got adoption, but it didn't help us to build a sustainable business because people are not willing to pay for it. And this is where I got a lot of requests from other coaches who then asked, hey, would you be able to build something like this for me? Because I have a methodology, I have an audience, I have reach, I have a business, and I would like to scale it, or I would like to work less or coach more, because 40% of the time of a coach is usually things that are follow-ups, admin, marketing that they're not being paid for. And there were so many reasons to say, yes, absolutely, we can build this for you. And today I help about 50 coaching businesses around the world and serving their clients, which can be B2C clients or business clients. And it's a great journey. And there's this multiplication effect of we supporting the coach and the coach with their experience, methodology, knowledge, supporting then a set of end users. And this is, I think, one of the path that could bring us eventually to something like a billion users or close to it, that we are becoming the default ethical infrastructure that is helping coaches to use AI to scale their practice, whatever that means for them. And there's someone to focus more on improving the acquisition, others want to improve the delivery or the retention of their clients, and many in betweens. Eventually, it should be a tool that really serves the mission of helping other people. And it goes back to the journey that I talked about in the very beginning. I wish I had a coach available in that moment where I needed it. And I had tremendous luck to work with really, really good coaches throughout my life and also learn from them. But having a coach in the moment where you need them was a rare thing. And I hope that CoachBot is one of the silver bullets to change that.
Thank you for sharing all that. It sounds invaluable and necessary to keep up with the way things are evolving. For listeners, primarily health and wellness coaching, though all coaches and healthcare providers, can you explain just briefly what is an LLM. And along this coaching, this CoachBot pathway, if I practically were to think about integrating something like this into a coaching practice, at what stages of the relationship or even what stages of the session does it come into play? I know that's a loaded question, but often we have this conversation where it's like, oh, it's technology. Either people love it, they embrace it, or still not familiar yet. And so I'm just trying to, especially from you with all of your knowledge, help share that expertise with anyone, regardless of where they are in their coaching journey.
Yeah. So first of all, the LLM is a large language model. And as you can hear, it's about language. There are many other models out there, like image models or vision models, and they can do different things. But here we're talking about understanding and generating human like texts. So those large language models, they're basically trained on the world's information available in proprietary and not so proprietary kind of source of information. So think about forums like Reddit, or unfortunately also places like Wikipedia or YouTube. They've been used to create this massive understanding of how do humans talk and what are the topics and what is the knowledge in there. And then all of that is structured in a way that it's part of a huge data set that then can be used by those machines, because we're talking here about artificial intelligence, and machine learning is part of that artificial intelligence. So to kind of take away a little bit of the fear, AI so far is just a tool, nothing else. Now, we might go further down the road and then one day realize, whoa, we've not only built a tool, this tool has consciousness. And then it's getting a little different, because then maybe it's no longer just a tool. But so far, in my understanding, and there's might be something behind closed doors that I haven't seen yet, which goes beyond, it's just a tool. And this tool helps us to use the data, and was in a process called deep learning, this self-supervised machine learning, and this extensive amounts of data and text. They can then carry out tasks. For example, explain me this, or how would you handle this situation, or can you create me a copy of that, or can you process that text? And the LLM can process much faster because it's built on these compute chips that are made for large processing amounts. There are lots of those chips in these data centers, and they're just waiting for us to query them with our prompts, basically. So the LLMs are being used now for many different use cases. But if you look into the Harvard Business Review study that they've done in Q1 on ChatGPT users from OpenAI, I think back then it was about 300 million, if I'm not wrong. Now I think it's about 700 self-reported million weekly users. And they are, as per this study, using ChatGPT for top use cases. I think number one was therapy and companionship. Then we have productivity. And then there was life design. And I think there was one more. And they were all somewhere in this kind of therapy, counseling, coaching, mentoring space. The interesting part that I want to say here is, like, the number one use case from LLMs today is already in the same area as we usually, as a professional coach, would do our work with organizations or individuals. You asked, where can you use AI as a coach? I think most coaches started to use AI just to get a text processed quickly and get maybe a summary out of it. Yeah, that's the simplest way to use an LLM for wherever you are in the business world or also in your personal life. It just can give you a summary, and it can also give you different summaries. Like, hey, can you do the summary in a funny, like a character from Disney? Or, hey, can you give me a summary by looking at the citations and bring me all the research that has been going in there and summarize this and so forth. So you can give out templates on how you want this job to be done. And LLMs always work the same way. We're prompting them. Prompting is instructing the large language model on how to work. So imagine these large language models being very potent, very fast in processing large amounts of text, and they're trained on all the kind of data in the world. So basically, they could do everything. However, if they do everything, they're really hard to use for people who do not know how to use them. Because when you tell them, hey, here's a tool, it can do anything, you're sitting in front of me like, what should I do? What should I do? How are you? Oh, that doesn't do well. So it's like, it needs to be specific for us as a human to know how to use the tool. And then B, in order, for example, to have a successful coaching conversation, it also needs to be somewhat limited to that. Because if, for example, we start and we say, hey, I'm feeling a little stressed, I'm overwhelmed with my career, the coach would pick up the work and say, tell me more. How is the stress coming to life? How do you feel about it? When do you experience it? Yada, yada. But then if the LLM would go in and immediately jump over and say, oh, by the way, I heard about this amazing job opportunity here at this company. And then suddenly you're already somewhere else and applying for that job. And the LLM would maybe already tell you how they are hiring, what is the job spec, and how to write your application and how to practice for the interview or review your resume. Now, it's so powerful. It can do so many things, but for a human being, always being carried away by something else, as we know, is probably not the best use of our time, especially when we're trying to reflect about something and make maybe progress on a difficult situation or something that is a complex emotional or value related challenge. And this is why in the coaching world, we need to somewhat limit down and narrow down those LLMs to just one specific thing, one use case, or one audience, like executive coaching or wellness coaching. And the use cases could be, for example, like helping to onboard a new client or acquire a new client or do follow ups after a coaching session. And even in that follow up, we can say, what is the focus? Should you create accountability by motivating them? Should you track their goals? Should you do little micro coachings or role plays? So the more specific we are, actually, the better the LLM can do the job. And this is how what we're doing with the prompt instruction. We're narrowing down and we're saying, hey, I want you to act as a coach. Imagine you would be trained like an ICF coach. Imagine you would only use whatever, the GROW model and the Oscar model, or do CBC or positive psychology. And then we're explaining to the model all the things that it should do and all the things that it shouldn't do, so it doesn't do what we as a human don't want it to do, meaning go into therapy or, let's say, do stuff that we feel the AI is not good with, that should be done by the human. And this is how we work with the coaches and the companies that use CoachBot in order to understand what is the problem that you want to solve. And we usually find out why can you not solve it as a human. Most of the problems that we're solving today can be totally solved by a human. However, either they want to do more of it, so they don't want to just onboard one but maybe 1,000 people, or they don't want to just follow up with one person but actually 100 because they have running a group coaching session and so forth, or it's just not the best use of their time because an LLM can do the job really well, we've tested it, and then they say, hey, I'd rather do something like transformational client coaching than spending my time with this admin task and going through the recording of the coaching session and write together this follow-up summary. So with that, I think AI can be used for automating processes that are currently done manually, which is freeing up time for the coach. It can be spent with the family, with coaching, with anything else. Or it can do things that we can currently only do for a certain scope. And now we can break free from that and do something much bigger. So if you maybe had a group coaching session, you can now potentially run a community call with, instead of just 8 people on it, you can actually do 100. You can pick out maybe 1 or 2 people during that session and transform live in front of the group so others can learn from it and observe and ask questions. But then the AI would do something else, which is, for example, set smart goals with the end users and so forth. So, yeah, with that, I want to round up. It's very important in LLMs that you have good prompting, that you know, is this an adequate use case? Can the LLM actually do its job? And then you need to build safety measures to make sure that the quality is actually as you want it to be. Because we know that if you ask an LLM 5 times the same question, there will likely be 5 different answers, and you still don't know if any of those answers is true or not. So, in order to bring LLMs and AI to use cases that are really depending on high quality, we need to build additional technology to safeguard the user experience. And that's what we're doing at CoachBot.
The global coaching community is so lucky and fortunate to have you because, as you know, like you yourself had gone through all this personal transformation, become a coach yourself. So, in terms of having this really profound understanding of how coaching is, what it is, and ethics, you firsthand have had that before building this into the world. Whereas there are so many other technologies that come out where that happens after, either through consultation or not firsthand by the founder. And I know one of the things you said with CoachBot was the emphasis on ethical use of technology. And so, how have you been able to do that? And in what means, just for coaching to be aware of when they're thinking about integrating technology into their practice?
Yeah, such a great question. And it's not an easy one as well, because values are so different from human to human, from region to region, and so are even privacy laws and other regulations. Nevertheless, I think being ethical or having a tool that suggests to be ethical is in the first place allowing you transparency. Starts always transparency. So when you read the terms and conditions, it should be written in a way that you can understand it. If this is not given, then it's already kind of a red flag, and you should really get help by an LLM or by your lawyer or someone else who's an expert to help you understand. Then B, those tools must be built for privacy and consent. If you cannot ensure as a technology company that the data that you're collecting is not going into places that are not crystal clear outlined in the agreement, or things change over time and so forth, then it's really difficult for the user to make a decision. Am I okay with that? Because if data is today stored in Europe and tomorrow in the US, it might not make a difference for me as a user because I don't even notice it while I'm on the app and so forth. But then maybe 3 years later, I realize, whoa, why did this company know all these things about me? Okay, over there in the US or in this region, it was totally legal for them to make a deal and just sell some of the data, or the government was able to access the data. They didn't even need to inform me and so forth. And to give an example of the regulation in, for example, the US, especially in certain states, you do not need to have consent of someone else recording the meeting. In Europe, that's totally different. You need to have consent of everyone participating. In some states in the US, as long as one person is okay to record the meeting, they can just press play. And then now the problem starts only. So let's say the person starts the recording, has the transcript, because the intentions are pure, right? The intentions are pure. They just want to have the notes to go back and potentially look something up if they forget, or they don't know where the conversation is going. So maybe it's good to have that. And then they're using a service, could be an LLM or something that's built on top of an LLM. So imagine you're using now that LLM or that service that is built on top of the LLM, and you haven't really done a good job in reading through the terms and conditions. However, it was so exciting to use because your friend told you about it and it's free at the moment. So you tried it yourself and you were amazed by the result and so forth. So the moment you feed that transcript in, again, good intent, because it's maybe giving you a great summary of it, or it's transforming it into maybe something else like video snippets or whatever you want to get out of it. You miss that maybe they are using the data that you're uploading for their own tuning of the models. That means they're using the data that they're collecting to improve the quality of their AI models, because whoever gets more data and differentiate data that explains better how to understand and generate human language has a competitive advantage at the marketplace. So there is a war going on among these big technology companies to find new data sets that they can train their models on it. And whoever has proprietary or domain specific data can use this as an advantage. Now imagine this company, again, fairly good intent, because they say, okay, we're just using this data to bring it into our model. They're improving their AI model, and then suddenly maybe some private information that you shared about your personal life, your beliefs, your dreams, maybe some health situations end up in that model. Then maybe this company is being sold or acquired in that way, or maybe they have a data leak, and then someone else gets access to this data. And oftentimes these models or these data sets are being used to train one model, and then out of these data sets we're training another model and taking its way. And then at some point it's really difficult, it's impossible to really trace back where did the incident happen. And even if you would say, wait, this company betrayed me and did use my intellectual property as a code, my methodology, my know-how, whatever, it doesn't matter, because now it's out there and so many people have access to it and it's commoditized and so forth. So even if you get to sue someone for your own financial loss compensation or your own peace of mind, it doesn't change much to the fact that this stuff is out there. And if it's just your methodology, I think that's okay. But if it's really private information about you, your kids, whatsoever, this is not okay. So this is kind of the big risk why everyone is freaked out lately, to have a profile photo in an app that is free of charge. And then you learn about the technology company running that app is using all the photos that maybe you post publicly or using as a profile picture or you share with your friends to train their models on. And then all this information is gone. So coming back, sorry for this long tour, but I wanted to explain how difficult it is and what are the motivations by those technology companies to train on your data. So your job is not only to read through and understand those terms and conditions, but you also need to make sure that you stay up to date and see, is something changing? Because you might have heard that OpenAI started as a non-commercial company with research and kind of non-profit orientation at first, and now they're changing that to be profit driven, and obviously so change the purpose, the goals, the stakeholders of the company. It's our job, wherever our data resides, no matter if it's intellectual property or something related to personal identity, we need to constantly make sure we have a due diligence system that allows us to understand, do I still want to have my data with this vendor? And then if I don't want that for any reason anymore, how can I get it back? And again, I need to check that before. Do they allow me to delete my data, to easy download it? Because maybe I want that data before it's being fully deleted. So as an example, in CoachBot, we allow coaches to download their IP, their prompt instructions, and then they can delete their account. We also allow our end users to download all their conversations or delete parts of their conversation or entire conversations. And obviously, then everyone can delete their accounts if they want to. We're also having committed ourselves to not train on any user data that is sensitive or any coach data that they put in to instruct their model about their methodology, about their interpretation of something like a framework or whatsoever. We're purely building our intelligence from different measures of feedback and system logic. It works quite well. It's still a very powerful coach, but we're not fine tuning on that stuff that is so sensitive. And then next to that transparency to how the AI works, you also can go a step further. And I think not a lot of companies are doing that. Is like, what data are you actually even saving about the user conversation in this memory? Because memory, as the name suggests, it's a good thing, right? Because if you have a conversation, let's say, about your brother and some of the issues that you have, and you're doing a coaching with your AI tool, and then a month later you're coming back and you're saying, oh, my brother showed up again, it triggered everything, it's pretty good if the AI already remembers what's the relevant stuff, so you can keep going and you don't need to explain it over and over again. If you're working with a good human coach, he or she can remember what you told them. So the memory is a good thing. However, we do not need to store stuff like credit card information, healthcare information. All these things don't need to go in there. Specific names about colleagues at work that you have an issue with and so forth doesn't need to go in there. These personalized data points are oftentimes not necessary. And again, this is a lot about user education. So for example, we tell our users to use anonymized or vague or whatever points. And we're also doing an effort to redact information before it would be saved. So we're calling this an ethical memory that is only saving selected information with care. And then again, users have this transparency to see what's in there and how can I delete it. And it's really difficult if you put users in front of that hard decision. Hey, if you want to delete something, you need to delete the entire account and the service is lost, right? Because that's an opportunity cost, which is pretty unfair. But this is how the world mostly works. Yeah, then on top, two more things that you can watch out for if you're using AI technology in coaching. Guardrails are super important, right? You want to make sure that the content is at all times safe. You don't want to have any bias in there. You want to avoid that you're having hallucinations. That's really a bad thing in coaching. It can destroy your client trust. It can also really destroy your authority in the space. And then a big topic close to my heart, because I have 3 young kids, you want to avoid that you're having underage users or users that don't have the maturity and are maybe even somewhat in a fragile mental state or somewhat in a needy state where AI in coaching is not helpful for them. So you want to build the right measurements and human in the loop systems to detect those situations, because they will just happen. Like, you cannot avoid them, but then you want to elegantly navigate them in a way that those people get the help that they deserve. And it can be as simple as saying, hey, this service is not for you. I'm going to refund you the money. However, I recommend you to speak to a professional, and here are some addresses or whatsoever. We want to build for that. And this is why we strongly believe AI is not here to replace us. AI is really here to amplify us as coaches. So we're going to see massive competition from AI in the future, because many people will build great AI coaches that will cost a fraction of what you as a human cost, or they're even free. So we need to become more competitive in terms of our offerings, our pricing, how we differentiate from the AI. Nevertheless, we are only building AI in coaching technology based on human experience, based on human methodology, on human oversight and supervision, because training and building an AI is not a one-off process. It's a continuous refinement process that needs a lot of commitment from both the technology party and the expertise side of the coach in order to make it safer and safer as we go and as we learn.
Let me ask you one more question before we wrap
Yes.
up. Speaking of all of these things to be aware of, for coaches, as you think about, and there's so much variation with coach training and the credentialing body that the coach training is approved for. So I'm specifically thinking of either like an International Coaching Federation, ICF training, or National Board of Health and Wellness coaching training. Any advice for coaches as to how they can educate themselves to overcome common gaps in education in AI and technology? Because I know ICF has come a long way and they have developed resources for coaches, but there's still not a lot of standardization in trainings. What would your advice for coaches be to overcome their gaps in education with regards to AI and technology and how it can support them?
So first of all, it all starts with knowing about AI. And there are so many places we can consume good knowledge about AI. Big tech companies are offering free courses on AI. That's a great starting point. There's tons of content on YouTube and also by the bodies and the associations that are bringing out more and more related courses. Personally, I partner up with Viva La Coaching. That's a coach community from two of my partners here in Germany. And they are a progressive group of coaches led by folks like Rebecca Rutschman and Jonathan Wright and David Drake. And they've all said AI is having a lot of opportunity for coaches and coaching as a practice, but there's also a lot of risks. So let's come together, let's connect, let's learn, let's experience together how we can integrate AI in a responsible way. So I recommend everyone to check them out, vivalacoaching.com. And they also have a manifesto. It's very much forward looking and very centric towards the ethics. But yeah, then when you have had some initial education on what is AI, it's very important to speak about it with fellow coaches, with your clients, with technologists, and so forth, in order to strengthen your understanding. One of the challenges that we're seeing in the coaching space is that even the terminology is not really clear. So if I ask you what is AI in coaching versus what is AI coaching, you probably have no idea. And if I ask 10 other people, no one could give me a clear definition of what's the difference. And even the bodies like EMCC versus ICF versus AC, they're still finding a common ground in terms of terminology and language. Nevertheless, the more conversations we're having, the more fluency we get in speaking about AI and also understanding someone else talking about AI and maybe picking up the nuances when they say something. I have a different understanding, but I have the maturity then to say, wait, I know you probably mean this, right? And then you can test for understanding. This is where the beauty comes in, because we can actually have conversations without misunderstandings and we can really help each other. And the maturity part is so important, because I believe, similar to many things, we're only really getting good in something if we teach it to others or if we experience it ourselves. And this is where I recommend every coach, no matter how much you dislike AI and how much you don't want it to come and ruin your practice, it will eventually, if you don't wake up. Please go ahead and try AI. That means find a safe space. This can be your own coaching reflection. This can be powerful prompts that you can get out of the coaching transcripts that you recorded with the consent of your client. This can be some help in doing marketing automation or creating some content. This can be, as we talked earlier, about creating something that can coach you or maybe your partner or maybe befriended coach and then get some feedback. It's not about creating AI immediately that can be rolled out to all your clients and replace you. No, not at all. It's really about making baby steps. But the moment you learn how to integrate AI and you improve it and you have conversations about it, this is where you get really mature and where you understand the benefits while managing the risks carefully.
It's very inspirational. Thank you for sharing that. It makes them tangible and something that otherwise would seem like a big open space. And so, just to wrap up, I'd love to ask you, what is your takeaway message for listeners?
Takeaway message is, I want to take away the fear by saying AI is not going to replace you as a coach. However, I want to also play the devil's advocate and not fool you. There will likely be someone using AI and being able to replace you or get really dangerous when it comes to your future practice, because it can be done at scale, it can be done cheaper, it can be maybe done better, who knows. now as human beings, we strive for human connection. And I think and I hope deeply that AI is bringing more wealth and many other things to humanity. So we all have more time and more interest and more funds to get a good human coach. However, looking at the trends, it will likely be just a handful of tech companies that will be very powerful in the future. And they will offer what they consider as super intelligence, including companionship, with all these things like flywheel engagement to the user. So you easily becoming addicted. And it will be, let's say, the kids and the ones that actually need professional help who probably get addicted, suffer from that first. So it's really my calling to you. Let's unite as coaches, as professionals. Let's help each other to learn and get more mature about AI. Let's not just say it's evil. Let's really make an effort to see the opportunity and create tools and create standards and create education that will help the users out there. And these users are your kids and the people that you love, to make conscious decisions about the tools that actually help them. And yeah, let's do what we can to use the last 30 years of ICF history and all the benefits, all the research that we've done in order to make coaching amplified by AI as safe and as powerful as it gets.
Such an inspiring message to end on. My takeaway also with speaking with you and just learning from your life journey is that the universality of that importance of living by values, listening to self, having that strength of self, and having the courage to change or pivot. And what happens when you allow yourself to follow your heart, align with your values, and how it can still lead to beautiful opportunity, otherwise unimagined, of contributing to society, contributing to the world in this way that we never could have thought. So thank you. In coaching, we always talk about walking that talk. You've walked that talk. And so it's been an honor to learn from you. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your light.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. I appreciate you and value your feedback. So please subscribe and write a constructive review. If you'd like to be informed of new episodes and offerings and resources for coaches, sign up for our email list at www.centerforhealthandwellnesscoaches.com. Sending you warmth and light.